So what is this virus, XMRV? Well, the RV means retrovirus. So that puts it in a family of viruses, retroviruses, that we actually know quite a bit about. And the X is xenotropic, M was mouse. This virus started in mouse. Now there's, viruses start somewhere. They got to start somewhere. And like the HIV virus started in a monkey, right? It's a monkey virus that eventually evolved several hundred years ago into a virus that could infect humans. And so we got this lousy virus, HIV. Well, XMRV is evolution in its own evolution, and it jumped from mouse to human at some point. We don't know when, but probably not in the too terribly distant past. Well, that didn't mean a lot because, in Darwin terms, distant past could be 100 million years. And these guys think like that, the evolutionary biologists, not one long ago, 1,000 years ago or so. But in this mouse virus, it could have been in this last century. That's the sense of it. About 3 to 4% of people have this virus, and they're not sick. And that's another part of this. So there's this background population. Now, I'm just saying that flat out, but I got to tell you, the research on this virus is only 2 years old. And so we don't know very much about it. And there's probably regional differences. There might even be continental differences. We don't know. There's been nothing done anywhere else. But they did some studies. Originally, this virus was found in prostate cancer, and so most of the work was done in that area. And there's 2 studies, one in Germany and one in Ireland, that failed to find this virus in their patients. Now, whether they were using the same technique or it's just not in Germany, it's not in Ireland, we don't know. So there's a lot of questions still to be answered with this virus. This science paper was amazing for a number of reasons. First, this team had put together such strong science that they could go for a science paper. And those of you that aren't in the land of science, science is like the mecca of publication. And you get your stuff in science, that's the best place you could possibly put it. And they don't take just anything, and they sure don't take something that's extremely well done, validated, and tested out. And so they took this paper. And if you read this paper, they not only took it, they put it in Science Express. They thought it was so important they published it on a very fast track. And so that was important. And if you read the paper, you'll see that they found this virus the first way they looked. They backed up and looked from a whole different angle, still found it, backed up and looked from another angle, still found it, then in 2 other ways. They in 5 different kinds of ways they looked for this virus, and they were able to find the virus. So I think that's why science was so impressed. They also used a very big population. They had 100 chronic fatigue patients, 101, and they had more than 200 controls. So that's usually, scientists like that kind of stuff. And then the interesting thing was, in this paper, the first 20 patients they studied were chronic fatigue patients that had developed some kind of cancer. That's actually how they got the cancer guy's attention, I'm assuming, because Dr. Peterson's got 30 years of stuff in his freezer, and he dug out everybody in his whole population that had ever gone on to develop a leukemia or lymphoma or any other kind of cancer, and they pulled those out first, and that's actually where they first found it, and that's what got their interest up. And then they went back and looked at a bunch of others. The way they looked is very sophisticated, and they found 67% that way. And then they tried to find in all these other ways, and when they added everything together, they could find the virus in roughly 95% of the patients using one technique or another, but not necessarily consistently, no matter what technique they used. But it means that there's at least 67% of people in that Reno cohort, and then possibly quite a bit more. So what is this virus? It's a mouse virus. It was first discovered in 2005. It was discovered by prostate cancer researchers looking for viral causes of cancer. So they found it in that study in 40% of prostate cancers. Another group looked and found it in 23%. So there have been 2 studies that said the virus is in prostate cancer. These other groups, though, have not found it in Germany or Ireland, so it's still considered somewhat controversial. It's a different strain than the one seen in prostate cancer. It's not exactly the same. Okay? I've already had patients whose husbands had prostate cancer thinking that they somehow infected their husband and they, my God, they gave my husband prostate cancer. Don't think that way, okay? It's a different strain of the virus. They're related, they're closely related, but we don't know enough to even pretend to go that far with assumptions. It's a virus that doesn't have a lot of mutations, and what that means to the virology world is that it doesn't change very much. It's not shifting around. There's not a whole bunch of different kinds of it, like there is with HIV, where within a few weeks of applying an antiviral, the HIV virus can mutate away and escape and go off and do its own thing. So this is a pretty stable virus. That bodes well particularly for vaccine work. That bodes extremely well. We don't know what that means to the antivirals yet. It just depends how much replication is going on. Why does it fit into chronic fatigue? Well, there's a lot of good reasons why it fits into chronic fatigue, but those of you that live and breathe this stuff might have heard me talk about natural killer cells a little bit. Well, NK cells are really broken in chronic fatigue syndrome, and natural killer cells are part of your defense that prevents latent viruses from reactivating. And they really, really don't work well in chronic fatigue syndrome. And our group has done 20 years of work to try to figure out why, and we know why. And we also extend that to say these natural killer cells that don't work are closely related to a different cell called the cytotoxic T cell. And it doesn't work either. And between the two of them, that is your antiviral latent viral reactivation system. Both of the systems are broken. So enter a virus that infects and affects natural killer cell function. And that's this one. And infects and affects T cells, cytotoxic T cells. That's this one. So we're kind of keen. We don't know for sure. I mean, this is so early in the work. We've got all of 3 weeks since that paper came out. There's going to be a lot of work to be done. But it would make a lot of sense, a good hypothesis to construct, that this virus is in there mucking up cell function. And that would make a lot of sense to what's going on. It also is a virus that can infect tissues that aren't white blood cells. And we always have thought something like that has to go on in chronic fatigue syndrome because you all have some neuroinflammation, meaning your brain has a low-grade level of inflammation, and you have some inflammation in the tissues that make hormones, particularly the hypothalamic pituitary axis. So, and this is a virus that has some tropism, or it infects that type of tissue. So it starts to make the whole picture come together. Now, we don't know enough about this virus's tropism or what stuff it likes to infect. This is just sort of the first look, and some of this may change as we get more sophisticated and look with better ways. But the sense is this virus, if it's acting like its cousin virus, HIV, that likes to infect those types of tissues, that it's going to have receptors that let it into other places too. So anyway, I think it fits well, and I'm very excited about that fit.